The crystal chandeliers of the Grand Plaza Hotel's ballroom cast dancing shadows across the annual Morrison family reunion. I adjusted my simple black dress, feeling distinctly out of place among the designer labels and diamond jewelry that adorned my more successful relatives. At 35, I was the family's designated disappointment, or so they thought. "Anna, there you are." My cousin Victoria's voice carried across the room with practiced authority. She was impeccably dressed in a Chanel suit, her recent promotion to executive vice president at Morrison Technologies evident in her bearing. "We were just discussing everyone's achievements this year." I fought the urge to check my phone, where an urgent email about tomorrow's billion-dollar merger sat unanswered. Instead, I plastered on a polite smile and braced myself for the annual ritual of subtle degradation. "Hello, Victoria. Congratulations on your promotion." I kept my voice neutral, remembering the stack of confidential documents in my home office that bore Victoria's increasingly desperate signature requests from the past month. "Thank you, darling." She air-kissed my cheek, her perfume expensive and overwhelming. "Though I'm surprised you heard about it, given how disconnected you are from the corporate world." She gestured to our gathered relatives. "We were just discussing how everyone's doing so well. James made partner at his law firm. Sarah's running her department at Goldman Sachs. And of course, I'm handling Morrison Tech's biggest merger yet." Aunt Eleanor, Victoria's mother and my father's sister, joined us, champagne flute in hand. "And what about you, Anna? Still doing that consulting thing?" The way she said consulting made it sound like I was selling magazine subscriptions door to door. If only they knew that Phoenix Consulting Group, the firm they dismissed so easily, was actually. "Yes, Aunt Eleanor. Still consulting." I sipped my water, thinking of the meeting scheduled for tomorrow morning. The meeting where Morrison Technologies' fate would be decided, though Victoria didn't know that yet. 10 years, Victoria mused, shaking her head with exaggerated concern. 10 years since you left that promising position at Anderson & Co. to find your own path. And what do you have to show for it? A small consulting practice that nobody's ever heard of. I thought about the private island I purchased last month, the 3 homes in different countries, and the fact that I was Victoria's boss's boss's boss. Not that she knew it. Phoenix Consulting Group operated entirely through subsidiaries and shell companies, with my name carefully hidden from public records. As the founder and CEO, I built it into one of the most powerful consulting firms in the world, specializing in corporate restructuring and major mergers. "We do all right," I said mildly. "How's the merger going, Victoria?" I heard there were some complications. Her perfectly maintained smile flickered for just a moment. "Nothing I can't handle, though I wouldn't expect you to understand the complexities of a billion-dollar merger." James, our cousin who just made partner at his law firm, joined our little circle. "Are you still working out of that small office downtown, Anna? You know, I could help you find a real job. My firm's always looking for administrative support." I bit back a laugh, remembering the meeting last week where James's firm had desperately pitched their services to Phoenix Consulting Group, unaware that the mysterious CEO they were trying to impress was standing right in front of them now. "That's so kind of you, James," I said, watching him preen at my apparent gratitude. "But I'm comfortable where I am." "Oh, honey," Aunt Eleanor interjected, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "You shouldn't settle for comfortable. Look at Victoria. She's about to close the biggest deal in Morrison Tech's history. The merger with Global Tech will make her career." If they only knew that Global Tech was one of my shell companies, created specifically to force Morrison Tech into a position where they'd need Phoenix Consulting Group's help. Victoria's biggest deal was actually my carefully orchestrated plan to teach my family a much-needed lesson in humility. "Speaking of the merger," Victoria said, checking her designer watch, "I should go. Early meeting tomorrow with the consulting team. They're just advisors, of course, but we have to humor them." She gave me a patronizing smile. "You should come by the office sometime, Anna. See what a real business looks like." I thought about the meeting she was referring to, the one where I would be sitting at the head of the table, not as Anna Morrison, the family disappointment, but as A.M. Phoenix, the reclusive founder of Phoenix Consulting Group. "Actually," I said, finishing my water, "I have an early meeting tomorrow too, a signing ceremony for a rather important contract." "Oh," James smirked. Finally landed a big client for your little consultation business. Something like that. I smiled, thinking of the stunned expressions I'd see tomorrow. You could say tomorrow will change everything. As I left the reunion, I heard Victoria's carrying whisper, "Poor Anna, still a nobody after all these years. What a waste of potential." In my car, I finally checked the email that had been buzzing in my pocket. It was from my COO. Everything's set for tomorrow. Morrison Tech's board is desperate to close this deal. They don't realize we're the ones holding all the cards. I drove home to my penthouse apartment, the one my family didn't know about, and spent the evening reviewing the final documents for tomorrow's meeting. The merger agreement was complex, deliberately so. Buried within its hundreds of pages were clauses that would give Phoenix Consulting Group significant control over Morrison Tech's operations. Victoria thought she was orchestrating a simple merger. In reality, she was about to hand control of her company to the cousin she'd spent years mocking. In my home office, I opened my safe and pulled out a thick folder labeled Project Morrison. Inside were years of documentation, every dismissive comment, every condescending remark, matched with corresponding business decisions that had slowly but surely led Morrison Tech into my web. Tomorrow, they would finally learn that success doesn't always wear designer labels or broadcast itself from chandeliered ballrooms. Sometimes it works quietly in the shadows, building something far bigger than anyone could imagine. I picked up my phone and dialed my assistant, Sarah. "Make sure the conference room is ready for tomorrow's 9 a.m. meeting. And please have the photographer on standby. I want to capture every moment when the Morrison family realizes who really runs Phoenix Consulting Group." As I prepared for bed, I couldn't help but smile at the thought of tomorrow's revelation. Sometimes the best revenge isn't served cold. It's served with a billion-dollar merger agreement and a signature line that reads, "Am Phoenix, CEO." The Phoenix Consulting Group's headquarters occupied the top 5 floors of downtown's most prestigious office tower. I stood in my private elevator, ascending to the penthouse conference room, watching the city wake up through the glass walls. My Armani suit, one I'd never wear to family functions, felt like armor. "Good morning, Miss Phoenix," my assistant Sarah greeted me as I stepped out. After 10 years, she was one of the few who knew both sides of my life. "The Morrison Tech team is waiting in the main conference room. Your cousin Victoria is apparently quite vocal about the delay." I checked my reflection in the brushed steel walls. Gone was the intentionally understated Anna from last night's reunion. Today I was Anne Phoenix, CEO of one of the world's most powerful consulting firms. "How long have they been waiting?" I asked, already knowing the answer. 20 minutes. Sarah's smile held a touch of mischief. "Ms. Morrison has mentioned her important position approximately 12 times. Well then, I straightened my jacket. Let's not keep them waiting any longer." The main conference room was a testament to power, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a commanding view of the city. Victoria stood at one end of the massive table, mid-rant about the disrespect of being kept waiting. James sat nearby, presumably there as Morrison Tech's legal counsel. Several board members, including my Uncle Robert, Victoria's father, and Morrison Tech's CEO, occupied the other seats. Finally, Victoria exclaimed as the door opened, "Do you have any idea who I—" Her voice trailed off as I walked in, her expression shifting from outrage to confusion to disbelief. "Anna?" James stood up so quickly he knocked over his water glass. "What are you doing here? This is a private meeting." I walked calmly to the head of the table, setting my briefcase down with a quiet click that seemed to echo in the stunned silence. "Good morning, everyone." I kept my voice professional, hitting the button that lowered the room's presentation screens. "I apologize for the delay. Shall we begin discussing the Morrison Tech Global Tech merger?" Uncle Robert found his voice first. "Anna, this is highly inappropriate. Where is AM Phoenix? We're here to meet with the CEO." "You are." I sat down, nodding to Sarah, who began distributing folders. "AM Phoenix. Anna Morrison Phoenix, founder and CEO of Phoenix Consulting Group, and as of this morning, the majority shareholder of Global Tech Industries." The silence that followed was absolute. Victoria had gone pale, her designer dress suddenly seeming like a child's costume. James was frantically flipping through the documents Sarah had distributed, his legal training kicking in as he searched for a loophole. "This "This is impossible," Victoria stammered. "You're just a small-time consultant. You work out of a tiny office downtown." "That office?" I smiled. "It's one of our meeting spaces for local clients. Phoenix Consulting Group operates in 47 countries, Victoria. We own this building. And as of today, we're about to own a controlling interest in Morrison Technologies." I stood up, clicking through presentation slides that detailed exactly how I built my empire while my family was busy underestimating me. 10 years ago, when I left Anderson & Co., everyone thought I was throwing my career away. What you didn't know was that I'd already secured contracts with 3 major international clients. While you were mocking my little consulting business, I was building a global network of subsidiaries and partnerships. Uncle Robert's face had turned an interesting shade of gray. "Global Tech, it's your company?" "Through a series of shell corporations, yes. Just like the venture capital firm that's been buying up Morrison Tech's debt for the past 3 years." I met his eyes across the table. "The same debt you're hoping this merger will help you resolve." Victoria sank into her chair. "The merger terms, the consulting fees, are non-negotiable." I pulled out the final contract. "Phoenix Consulting Group will assume control of Morrison Tech's operations, restructure the management team, and implement a new corporate strategy." "You can't do this," James interjected, his legal partner bravado cracking. "The board won't approve." "The board already has." I nodded to Sarah, who displayed the voting results. "They did so last night, after reviewing the complete terms. Terms that make it clear Morrison Tech will face immediate loan recalls without this merger." Uncle Robert stood up slowly, his authority visibly crumbling. "Why, Anna? Why go to all this trouble?" "Because 10 years ago, you all taught me a valuable lesson." I walked around the table slowly. "You taught me that perception matters more than reality. That titles and appearances count more than actual ability." I stopped beside Victoria's chair. "Last night, cousin, what did you call me?" "A nobody after all these years." Victoria couldn't meet my eyes. The memory of her words at the reunion hung heavy in the air. "Here's today's reality," I continued. "Morrison Technologies is now a subsidiary of Phoenix Consulting Group. Victoria, your position as Executive Vice President is being eliminated. James, your firm's services will no longer be required." I turned to Uncle Robert. "And you, Uncle, will be announcing your retirement, effective immediately." The next hour was a blur of signatures, legal requirements, and shocked silences. As the Morrison contingent prepared to leave, thoroughly defeated, I called out one last time. "Victoria." She turned, her makeup smeared from poorly concealed tears. "Next family reunion, remember, success doesn't always wear Chanel." After they left, I stood at the window, watching the city spread out below. Sarah appeared at my side with a coffee. "Was it worth it?" she asked quietly. "All these years of hiding your success?" I thought about the decades of condescension, the dismissive comments, the patronizing offers of real jobs. Then I thought about the empire I'd built, the thousands of employees who relied on me, the positive changes I could now implement at Morrison Tech. "It wasn't about revenge," I said finally. "It was about proving that success comes in many forms, that you don't have to follow their path to build something meaningful." Over the next year, Morrison Technologies transformed under Phoenix Consulting Group's leadership. I appointed competent executives based on merit rather than family connections. Victoria eventually found a mid-level position at another firm, hopefully having learned the value of humility. James's law firm struggled after losing both Morrison Tech and Phoenix as clients. The family dynamics shifted too. At the next reunion, held in a much more modest venue, there was less bragging about job titles and more genuine conversation. Aunt Eleanor actually asked about my business with real interest, though she still occasionally flinched when someone mentioned Phoenix Consulting Group. My father, who had watched silently for years as his sister and her family dismissed his daughter's choices, finally told me how proud he was. Not of my financial success, but of how I'd handled it all. "You built something real," he said, hugging me at the office one day. "Something that matters beyond just money and power." He was right. Phoenix Consulting Group had become more than just a vehicle for proving my worth to my family. It was a force for change in the business world, promoting innovation and ethical leadership. In my office, I keep a small photo from that first reunion after the revelation. It shows the moment Victoria realized who I really was. Not because I enjoy her discomfort, but as a reminder that true success isn't about titles or appearances. It's about building something meaningful, something that lasts. The random consultant they dismissed for a decade had built an empire. But more importantly, she'd built it her way on her own terms. And that, more than any merger or acquisition, was the real victory. These days, when people ask about my path to success, I tell them the truth. Sometimes the quietest voice in the room belongs to the most powerful person at the table. And sometimes the best response to those who underestimate you isn't to prove them wrong immediately. It's to build something so magnificent that when they finally realize their mistake, it's already too late to matter. As for that little consulting business they used to mock, it just acquired its 100th company last week. But that's a story for another family reunion.